Hi, I'm Jimmy and this might become your favorite Photoshop channel. Today I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to improve your workflow in the Layers panel. So without wasting any time, I'm just going to dive straight into it. Tip number 1 is about how to create layers in Photoshop. So here we have an image of some hands, and if I turn on the mask, you can see what I've actually done. I've basically just cut out the hands. The image is by Gabriela, and you can find the link to the image in the description. It's on unsplash.com. So the tip here is about creating a new layer, and you're probably used to creating a new layer by hitting that little plus sign and then creating a new layer, and then you can drag that layer below and you can create a new background or something like that. But I'm just going to show you a very quick way of doing this, and that is by, if you're on a PC, hold down the control key, and if you're on a Mac, hold down the command key and then hit that little plus sign, and then boom, and there you go. Tip number 1 saved you at least a quarter of a second, so pretty amazing, I would say. Tip number 2 will save you another quarter of a second. It's about creating mask. Let's take a look. So for this next image, I've already created a selection, and I want to get rid of the sky, maybe so I can replace it with something different. And in this case, I want a mask. But if I hit this little add layer mask, what happens is that I'm actually going to keep the sky and not the tree. And then I know you can invert this mask. You can even hit that little button right there. But I want to show you something different. If you want to create a negative mask on the fly, what you can do is actually hold down the Alt key on your PC, or if you're on a Mac, you can hold down the Option key, and then you simply hit that little Create Layer Mask button, and then it will instantly invert the mask. And again, I'll save you a quarter of a second, right? So for the third tip, it's actually, again, a very simple thing. It's about understanding the difference between opacity and fill. So here I have some text, and you can see the text right there, and there's a fill button, there's opacity, and I've also created this effect on the button. There's this little bevel effect, and there's some drop shadow. I'm just going to turn off the effect, lower the opacity. You can see that the text is getting more and more translucent, and eventually it will be invisible. If I do the same thing with the fill, the same thing happens. So what is actually the difference between the fill and the opacity? Well, here's the tip. The difference is with the opacity, if I turn on the effect, you can see that, yes, everything gets transparent as we would expect. But with the fill, what happens is that we're going to turn off the color of the layer or the graphics on the layer, but keep the effect. And in that way, we can have just the effect and not the graphics itself. But why would we want that? Well, I'll show you exactly why we would want that. So I'll create a new layer, and on that new layer, I'm gonna take my brush, so over there, and we could just, make the color all red so it's easy to see. And now, if I zoom in a little bit, I can start creating something that looks a little bit like, water droplets. So there's something sliding down there. Bottle is creating these water droplets, and as you can see, they don't really look like droplets yet. But I'm going to show you, because if we were to use the different effects, we can actually create the effects of these droplets. And yeah, let me see. I'm just going to do a few more. Something like that. I really want them to cover some of the details here in the label underneath it, like this perhaps. And then I have these styles, and they're basically effects created with this FX menu and then saved onto a style. So let's say I want to create the style of this text here. So if I'm on this text layer and hit that little plus sign right there, I can actually create a style based on my bevel, emboss, and my drop shadow. So I could call this one text effect, and I can include all these options here, and I click OK, and you can see there is the effect for the text. So in case I'm losing the effect for the text, I can just go up and I can click on that one, I get the effect back. So if I want to use that effect over and over again, that's a good way of doing it. But instead of that, and I'm going to throw out the text layer, I created these droplets, and I've also created an effect that hopefully will make everything look like droplets. So if I hit this one there, you can see I've got these nice looking drops right there. And just to make this really believable, we can also add the effect of a rippled bottle. So I've actually just used some ripple effect on the bottle on this layer right here. If I take the outline of the droplets, and I did that just by holding down the control and clicking that little icon right there, or if you're on a Mac, of course, you hold down the command key and you click that little label, and then I go to my distorted bottle and I'm going to add this little layer mask so that the distortion is only within those droplets. And as you can see, we've got the effect of the label underneath being affected by the water droplets. So if you're really interested in how I created these droplets and want to learn how to do it, then follow the channel, because I am gonna make a video on that subject. Perfect. Yeah, so the tip here is really basically about the opacity and the fill. What is the difference there? So another great tip number 4, is on this image right here. So this is an image I created of my girlfriend, and as you'll see, there is a bunch of layers. And one of the things is that if I just want to go in there and type a new text at the bottom, or maybe make some changes to some of the colors, you know, it can be very difficult to find the correct layer that does exactly what I'm trying to change. So here at the top where it says kind, you can actually go in and say, well, I want to find a layer based on a name, or it has to be an effect or something different. So what I can do here is that, as you can see, there are small buttons here to the right side of the word kind. So if I hit that little T, for example, I would only see the text layers, and that way, you know, if I was maybe new to Photoshop and I was trying to find the right layers where I can change the text, this would be a very good way of doing that. There is even a search criteria here for vector shapes, and there is one here for only the adjustment layers. So if I hit this one, you can see all my color adjustments are right there. And so it's very easy to find exact layer that because you're probably like me and you're not naming half of the layers that you just call layer 3, layer 4, layer 5. I really try to name all layers when I deliver to customers, but when I'm just playing around for myself, you know, it's not always that I remember to name all the layers. So this is very handy for me. And now tip number 5. So there is something called clipping mask, and this is a tip for all you who don't know about clipping mask, because I might want to change something here. You know, I have this image here with some of these bokeh kind of effects, but I find that they dominate the image a little bit too much. So I want to get rid of a little bit of that warm tone to it. So I've created this curve layer, but as you can see, there is this little arrow pointing down to the bokeh. So I'm just gonna remove this one so you can see what I have been doing. So I'm gonna create a curves adjustment, and now I can start doing adjustments. The problem is I'm affecting the whole image, and I only want to affect the bokeh, like these orange circles here. So what you can do is that you can right click on that layer and hit that little one called create clipping mask. If you are in a Danish version, it's called udsnitsmaske. And if you're in German or Chinese version, I have no clues what they're called. But in the English versions, they're called clipping mask. So I can hit this one here and it will create that little arrow that will point directly to my bouquet underneath. So I'm not really color adjusting anything else. So I'm just, color correcting that one layer that I need. Another way of doing this is also, if you're on a PC, you can hold down the Alt key, and if you're on a Mac, you can hold down the Option key, and then just move your mouse cursor between those two layers. You can see my mouse cursor is changing, and then I'm actually just going to click there with my mouse, and then I've created that little clipping mask. And now, if I do any adjustments, you can see it only affects those orange lights, the bouquet, and with and without, you can see here's the before, here's the after. This is more the result that I was going for. So tip number 5 is actually make sure you use the clipping mask, because they are really essential to being efficient within your layers panel. So that's pretty much everything from me today, and I hope you subscribe to the channel, because I'll put up a bunch of more videos for you guys. So yeah, follow along and I'll see you next time.